Hi students, here again I am in front of you with yet another lesson from our second PUC textbook, English textbook, and this time it is a beautiful lesson. This time I would like to take you over to Japan and Brazil. Are you ready to come to or go to Japan and Brazil? Surprised, isn't it? The offer seems to be tempting, especially when we are in this lockdown period. Of course, the lockdown has been lifted, but still we are limited to our houses. We are limited to houses. We all used to call home sweet home. And today this particular sweet home has become something different. Rather, I wouldn't say, it would be wrong to say not sweet, but little different than sweet, because we have lost the taste not of our home but of the society outside. So we have become a kind of birds that are caged. You see, a cage is a cage, even if it is a golden one. Similarly, a house, though it is a sweet home, though it is a family, since we are limited or a kind of imprisoned in our houses, so we are longing. Forget about Japan and Brazil. We are longing to come to our college. We are longing to come to our school. Someone made a very funny comment the other day. This year, since colleges do not seem to be opening, there would be a tour for all the students organized. And which are the places to be visited? It is a one-day picnic to your respective schools and colleges. Looks and sounds funny, isn't it? But it has got a deeper meaning, and it shows the reality in which we are there, whatever it is. A kind of mental delectation, a kind of mental entertainment is required. And I'm sure this particular lesson, that is lesson number 11, that is Japan and Brazil through a traveler's eye, would provide us just the needed information, and a kind of, it will take us to a different world altogether. And I would try my level best to take you to Japan, and of course I would bring you back as well. Fine. So let us begin this lesson, and it is Japan and Brazil through a traveler's eye. Okay. Here below you can find, I've taken a map of that of Japan, and then we have got Brazil here. Okay, you find this statue of Christ, the Redeemer, which is there in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Okay, then you find this, a famous volcano in Japan as well. Okay, right. Just to bring you or to make you to imagine about Japan and Brazil. First, we will be visiting Japan. Now, before I could start this lesson, I need to tell you something about Travelogue, or something about travel writing. For us, especially the digital children of this digitalized world, or the digital children of this 21st century, travel writing sounds a little strange. Okay, travelogue, it sounds little strange, but you must remember, just let's go back to 1 century, or say 2 or 3 centuries. We did not have internet. We did not have broadband. We did not have FTTH connections. We did not have satellite connections. Hence, what were the ways, or what were the ways through which we could come to know about others, especially outside our place, or say outside our country? Well, Travelogue was the only way. Today we have got TV. Today we have got Discovery Channel. Today we have got Animal Planet. They take us to different world altogether. And sitting in the comfort of our room, in our houses, in our homes, we can visit all these places through these different TV channels, or say you have a CD, or through different ways. Today we have got OTT facility, so we can go anywhere. But I would like to take you back to 1st century, 2nd century, or say beginning much earlier than that, how did the people manage? How did they come to know about others? Well, the only way they had was travelers or travel writing, or what you call travelogue. Travelogue, that is description by a traveler about a particular country. Okay, I have a short note here, which you also find in the beginning of the in the lesson. In the beginning, it is written in italics. You can make out very well. I just paraphrase it here. So first question is, what is travelogue? Well, the definition says a film or a book or an article or an illustrated lecture about the places visited by or experiences of a particular traveler. Imagine I travel to a particular place, and in that particular place I have different kind of experience. For example, in your first year you had one particular lesson called Oru Manusham. Well, he travels more than 1500 miles away from his house, from south to the north, and there he has a different kind of experience. Okay, and he writes it, and we have studied it. Similarly, a traveler, he goes to a place, a country, and there he experiences the local culture. He experiences the different behavior of those people and the different things that are to be learned from those people. And for the sake of others, he writes a book, he writes an article, or he makes a documentary. Today we have got many documentaries of that sort. He makes a documentary. And now those people who cannot go to those places can read this article, can read this book, or view this documentary and come to know about those places. You need not visit physically, you need not go to that place, but by what they have written, we come to know. And this is exactly what happened in the beginning of, this particular century, or much earlier than that. I've got some examples here. For example, in your social science, social studies, you have studied Megasthenes, okay, who was there between take second and third, or third and fourth BC, before Christ. Okay, that time he had, he visited a place and he wrote a book called Indica. He wrote India. He came to India and he wrote the book called Indica, describing about India. I'm sure later you have come to know about this. Secondly, we also had heard about Fa Hian, okay, or Fa Hian, okay, a Chinese traveler from, that is 3rd and 4th century, from 399 to 414 AD, Anno Domini, okay, that is year of Christ, or we call it, okay, Anno Domino. So Fa Hian is a Chinese traveler, and he came to India and he described the culture, the system, the educational system, the political system, the city planning, everything in his travelogue, in his writing. Then we also had one more writer, that is Huan Sang. Okay, these are Chinese names, they are very strange ones, but it's enough that we know that there was a person of this sort. Okay, you pronounce it in any way. Sometimes we can pronounce a noun, or we have got a freedom for that. So this happened in 7th century. I'm sure you must have studied about Harshavardhana during his time. These Chinese travelers used to come to India, used to visit Nalanda, Takshashila. Okay, so that is Huan Sang in 7th century. Then we have one more Arabic visitor, that is Al-Biruni in the 11th century. I'm sure Akbar and his time, this visitor used to come. Then of late we have got another writer, Marco Polo, a European writer, Marco Polo, in the late 14th century, who wrote about India in his travelogue. So all these writers, could be Megasthenes or Fa Hian or Huan Sang, Al-Biruni, Marco Polo, all these people, they came to India. They must have gone to other places as well. They came to India and they wrote about India, and they made known India to the outside world. And you must remember, in olden days, the kings used to patronage, they used to sponsor these kind of travels, these kinds of visits. Why? So that they could come to know the culture or about the other place, other country. Sometimes it can be for the purpose of winning over, for the purpose of what? Sometimes it can be for bilateral relationship, sometimes for the sake of business. It can be any purpose. It is to be sponsored, because today we can just book a ticket and we go. But olden days, they had to travel by sea to travel from one place to the other, or by road. There weren't vehicles, so it was not an easy, not an easy task. So it is to be sponsored, and it would go for years together, years together. Hence, it used to be sponsored by others. But of late, as the days went by, as scientific and technological developments took place, Travelogue has taken a backseat. Why? As I said today, well, we visit Discovery Channel, we have a documentary about particular place, particular culture, particular tribe, and we have done with it. We come to know. We need not spend any money except for the charging of the channel. That's all. That's all. Or we have got films, or we have got today most important or most advanced technology. We have got internet, we have got Google Maps. We can go anywhere, we can visit the place, and we can study. We have got Wikipedia. We have got different ways from which we come to know about other nations or other places. Okay, this is the introduction part I would like to tell. But whatever said and done, we need to study this lesson, that is Japan and Brazil. Okay, we have heard, or we have got many goods with us made in Japan. Okay, it can be Casio watch that we have got, or the calculators that we have got. So there are so many things which are made in Japan. And the moment we think of Japan, we think they are very intelligent people, they are very hardworking people, and especially after the Second World War, when America had bombed, okay, Japan from 1945, these days, August. Okay, so how well or how strongly they built their nation and how they have stood today. Okay, so they are very famous for their technological development, for especially their discipline in life. And of late I heard even in fighting against corona, they are fantastic because of the self-discipline they have got, which we need to learn even from them. So there are many things we need to learn from these people, or from Japanese. Okay, so let's go to Japan and be with them, be one with them, and then come back and see what we can learn from them for our personal life. Okay, right. Japanese manners. So in this lesson, we will not be studying everything about Japan. We'll be studying only about Japanese manners. Okay, their mannerism, their manners. Okay, let's see. Very interesting lesson and very funny as well. Lot of entertainment for us as we study about them. Okay, a quarter of an hour in Japan will convince you that you are among exquisitely well-mannered people. Look at that. The writer, that is George Mike, says a quarter of an hour. 1 hour consists of 60 minutes. A quarter of an hour, that is just 15 minutes. If you are in Japan, you come to know that you are among well-mannered people, good-behaved people, mannerisms, good behavior, especially public behavior, well-mannered people. I would like you to just think about yourself. Suppose you go to bazaar, you go to the city, you go to the places, different places, how the people behave. Especially if I touch someone on the way, or inadvertently if I touch, the reaction of the people, or if you have to say excuse me and go somewhere, how they react. Okay, especially in local language, how they react. With that, our manners are determined. So you can just imagine when the foreigners come to our country, our places, how they must be finding us. You see, we must be very, very careful, especially when we deal with with the foreigners, because they carry that impression to their place and tell about us. They don't tell about one particular person, they tell about our nation. That is how we must be very remembered. That's why our elders have told us, Atiti Devo Bhava. So when the guests come to us, especially outsiders, we need to treat them like gods. Because they carry the same impression to their place. They don't speak about person 1 or 2 or 3. They speak about the whole country. I went to India and Indians are like this. But you see, if you go to Japan, I'm sure George Mikes went to Japan, 15 minutes he says, well, I came to know about their good behavior, their manners. And he says, people who live on hopelessly overcrowded island have to respect one another's privacy, or rather would have to if they had any privacy. Now this is very important. He says they live in an island. You can see seen over here, Japan is completely covered by water. It is an island. In fact, there are a group of islands. So there are many islands, and it's very small, and very, very limited place is available in Japan. That's why the author says it is overcrowded. Japan is overcrowded. Okay, when, for example, in Karwar, when Karawali Utsav takes place, when we go to the beach area, we find how it remains overcrowded. Today, because of Corona, this social distancing, crowding is not allowed. Forget about overcrowding. So, but Japan is overcrowded. Why overcrowded? Because the population is more than the place available there. So, public places are always overcrowded. Hence, the author says privacy is not there at all. Almost privacy is absent. Meaning to say, you can't say nobody is looking at me. You will be observed by many people. I will be wrong to say if I say others are observing you. Later we will come to know. In other words, what I mean to say is you will find people everywhere. That's why he says they would have to, if they had any privacy, meaning to say they have no privacy in Japan. Maybe the word privacy doesn't exist there. Only public exists there, because everywhere it is public. But they don't. So, courtesy has a double function. Look at this word. Courtesy has, it has double function. He says, what is that double function? What's courtesy? That manner, or when I say, courtesy, you need to understand it here. It says, courtesy has a double function. It is courtesy and it is substitute privacy. Courtesy is then substitute courtesy is substitute for privacy. Courtesy, not an. Courtesy is a substitute for privacy in Japan. Meaning to say, for example, you are in public place and you want to feel private, understand my words, not that you are in a private place, you are in a public place, but you want to feel, you just need to say, excuse me, and you can be as if you are in a castle. The example next is given to you. So courtesy, you just need to say, you need to practice, excuse me, I want to talk to someone. So the people who are there, they may not move, there is no place to move, but they will behave as if they don't exist there. And you can be very free. One example is given there. What is the example given? It is said there, take for example, the little red telephones in the streets, shops, halls or hotels. Okay. The instrument is situated on a table or on a counter. They have no space to spare for booths. Today we need to imagine, all of us have got mobiles. Hence, telephone booths are out of place today. But just say 10 years ago, everywhere there used to be telephone booths. We call them public telephone booths. A small kind of booth, booth where an instrument, a phone receiver is kept there. So anybody would like to have or want to talk to a person would go inside, lock the door or close the door, okay, and can talk to anybody because it's completely covered by glass. So it is not heard outside. You have that much of privacy there. And you find today we don't find anywhere telephone booth because it is not required. They have become outdated. They are not there. But he gives an example. Imagine in Japan there is no place even to erect a telephone booth. Hence, where is the phone kept? It is kept on the table near the shop or outside the shop. Just on the table it is kept there, which means people would be visiting the shop, shopkeeper, shop owner would be there, and you have to have your private conversation, which means he would listen. Would he? Let's see whether he listens or not. The instrument is situated on a table or on a counter. They have no space to spare for telephone booths. You conduct your most confidential business transaction, your intimate love quarrels in public, yet in perfect privacy. Kind of oxymoron you can find there. A kind of, opposition. What opposite thought is presented there? What is that? Contrast. What is that? He says you can have your private or confidential business in your intimate love quarrels in public, yet in perfect privacy. Now, how can you have privacy in public? How can you have privacy in public? I said oxymoron. A kind of contrast there. Opposite things are kept together. Okay. Can I drink, boiling cold water? Boiling cold water? Not possible. Not possible. Similarly, how can I have intimate love relationship or confidential private talk in public? But it is possible in Japan. How it is possible? The previous one I said here, what is that? Courtesy is a substitute for privacy. What is that courtesy? When the other person finds that his own companion or his neighbor is talking over the phone, he would behave as if he doesn't exist there. He would behave as if he is deaf and dumb and blind. He cannot see. So I can be very sure if I'm having a very intimate love talk with someone whom I love, or a business relationship, business transaction, you can be very sure the other person has not heard. Will this be possible in our place? We know very well. When our neighbor begins to fight, when we hear a noise, we leave everything, studying or cooking, everything. We run to the window and we try to listen. What is the problem? What are they fighting? Don't listen, then we are ready to open the door and come out and find out what is happening there. We are so much interested. We leave everything. Sometimes we leave our prayer. Sometimes we leave our even, the TV serials and run and listen to the fight or the quarrel that takes place with our neighbors. Why? We are so much interested about others' private life. We are so much interested about others' private life and we are not bothered about us. In Bible there is a beautiful saying, when there is a log in your eyes, why do you look for a splinter in your neighbor's or brother's eyes? Meaning to say, when there is such a big problem within you, why are you worried about others? First look about yourself. And Japanese are a beautiful example. They don't get into your private matters. Don't get into private matters. That is their mannerism. That is their good behavior. That is their respect to the other person. See, don't we learn from this so much? Hence, you conduct your most confidential business transaction, your intimate love quarrels in public, yet in perfect privacy. Anybody, any passerby could listen in, but nobody does. Isn't it? If I am here or there is a, other person just sitting beside me, he can listen, but he wouldn't. He wouldn't because he knows that listening to his private conversation is not a good manner. It's not correct, and he doesn't. Even by default, he doesn't. Okay, a man's telephone receiver is his castle. Castle means fort. We know the olden days kings used to remain in a castle, in a fort, and that is to be very, very safe. We have a fort in Chitradurga castle. Okay, we have Golconda fort. Okay, we have got different forts and how safe they used to be, which means you are very safe. So, if a telephone booth is compared to a castle, I go inside and I talk and nobody, is able to hear it outside. So, I am very confident. But in Japan, you can sit outside and there can be a fair going on. There can be a jatra going on. There can be, thousands of people moving about. But still, you can be very, very confident that nobody has heard your conversation. How nice if Karwar was Japan. How nice if India was Japan. Forget about that. Why don't we hope at least that we learn this courtesy, we learn these good manners from Japanese. Okay, so this is a very important one there. A man's telephone receiver is his castle. This question is many times it is asked in the examination. Okay, remember, a man's telephone receiver is his castle. Okay, that is his private house like. Okay, let's go ahead. What is that? You will of course immediately notice their mania for bowing. Second aspect we are going here among the mannerisms. First manner we saw. Second one, mania. For mania means a kind of madness. Okay, remember that is not so much negative word, madness. Now here people bow. What do we compare it in our place? In India, of late, during these corona times, the Indian manner of greeting became very famous, which is that we call it as Anjali Hasta. Okay, we fold our hands and we say namaskar to the other person. You go to European countries, most of the time, they shake hand with the other person. The moment we go, we just shake hand and we wish him good morning, or we ask him, how are you, or how do you do? Okay. There are different ways of greeting the other person. Okay, in India, we greet with folded hands and we say namaskar. Or in Europe, they shake hand. You go to Arabian countries, they hug each other and they exchange kind of greeting or peace. But in Japan, we have got a different practice. And what is that practice? It is bowing. Usually in India, we bow in the temple. We bow in front of the deity. We bow in front of the cross. We bow in front of the statue of gods. I can't say statue of God. You cannot have a statue of God. Gods you can have. Okay. So we bow. In Japan, there is a mania practice of bowing. Bowing to whom? Bowing to the other person. Okay. In other words, that is their greeting. That is their greeting. Their greeting is by bowing. Bowing means lowering your head in front of the other person. Now, quite interesting. Let us see here. You will of course immediately notice their mania for bowing. Everybody keeps bowing to everybody else. This is very, very important. What is that? Everybody keeps bowing to everybody else. You find a image here. I am so sorry. Thank you. Hello. For everything they bow. And for different, they have got different type of bowing. For I am sorry, see how much he bows here. For thank you, see how much he bows. For hello, see how much he bows. And when he doesn't greet, he doesn't bow. And here we find two elderly people bowing. Whereas this man looks more elder than this person. Okay, elder, because his hair is turned white. So normally we think people who are white haired are matured in age, both in wisdom as well. So you find here, and the meaning we would tell here. And here you find brother, or like one boy and a girl, maybe a brother and sister or friends, whatever it is. We will find meaning for this bowing here. Okay, but whatever it is, in Japan, everybody, one bows to the other, or everybody bows to the others. Okay, and how? What is their bowing style? It is said with the ceremonious solemnity of a courtier, yet with a great deal of natural and inimitable grace. First, their bowing, it is a ceremonial or a ceremonial solemnity, great grandeur we call it. Ceremonial, especially when we go to temple and all, we simply just do like this. We fold our hands and very prayerfully, very devoutly we bow there. Devoutly we bow. When we greet our friends, we say good morning in a different way. But when we greet our teachers or elders or Swamijis, we greet in a different way. That is called ceremonial solemnity. That seriousness or a kind of reverence, we call it. Reverence. Okay. So this bowing in Japan also is done with this different kinds of degrees of bowing is there. Okay. So it is done, he says, ceremonial solemnity. How? And it is compared to of a courtier. In the court, in the king's court, when the king comes, how other people bow to the king, that solemnity, that respect is there, that reverence is there. Similarly, it is done in Japan, and with a great deal of natural and inimitable grace. Imitable means you can imitate it. Inimitable, you cannot imitate. So quaint it is called, so special bowing. If you go and do that, you may do it very wrongly. It looks so easy, but it is not so easy. Okay, that's why it is said inimitable grace. Inimitable. Imitable, you can imitate, you can do it, but inimitable, you can't. For example, Rajnikant style of dialogue delivery, inimitable, or somebody else, and we just go mad when they say it. We try to do that, we may falter, we may not come up to that level. Similarly, bowing in Japan, whatever you do, you cannot match them in bowing. It is so perfect. They do it when it comes to bowing. How it is? Bowing is neither less nor more silly than shaking hands or kissing the cheek, but it is quainter. I already told you. Bowing is, he says, well, it is not less or more than silly than shaking hands. In India or where abroad, European countries, we shake hands. So he says bowing is equal to shaking hands or kissing the cheek of the other person. But there is some difference, he says, but it is quainter. What is quaint? Quaint, quainter, quaintest. Quaint or quaint means unusual. It is not so easy. Something different about that. Something different. Okay. So it is very quainter, more formal, more oriental. Okay. Japan comes to the eastern side. So we call that oriental countries. So it is more oriental. Korea, South Korea, Japan, China, we can put them together. Maybe they belong to the same race. So it is more oriental, which is meant for them. more oriental, and it is also infectious. This word infectious is very famous today because of corona. COVID-19, that virus is very infectious. It spreads from humans. Okay, if I shake hand with you, you get it. When I sneeze, the droplets can fall on you. When I cough, the droplets can fall on you and you get infected. And it is said the Japanese way of bowing, style of bowing is also infectious, meaning to say it is not a virus, but when one bows to the other one bows to the other, so it goes. It's kind of Mexican waves. In stadiums, we have seen Mexican waves, it simply spreads. One end it begins and it continues. Mexican wave, you stand up and you sit, you stand up and you sit, it continues. Similarly, bowing in Japan, it is infectious. It spreads from one to the other, or one picks up from the other. After a few hours, you start bowing yourself. That's what. When you go to Japan, you find that you meet a person and he bows to you, and you do not know what to do, and you also bow to him. Then you meet another person, he also bows to you, and you get confused and you begin to bow everybody. Meaning to say, you see, that practice from them has shifted to you, or you have contacted that practice. So you begin it. But you bow too deeply or not too deeply enough. The problem is, when you do it, meaning to say a non-Japanese person, Japanese or an outsider, when he goes to Japan, and if he thinks I do the same like a Japanese, you are committing a mistake. Either you are bowing too deep, or you are not bowing at all, or it is too less, because there is a degree of bowing in Japan. For an elderly person, how much you have to bow? For your father, for your mother, for your sister, for your teacher, or a lawyer, or a judge. For different people, there is a different way or different degree of bowing. That's why he said, if you practice it, either you are bowing too much or it is too little. You bow to the wrong man at the wrong time. See the fun here. You may bow at the wrong person at the wrong time. That's very dangerous, very dangerous. People may misunderstand you. Well, you do not clasp your hands in front of you, which is bad. You cannot clasp your hands and bow like this, which is very bad. That is not a good manner. You can find them, they hold their hand in attention position and then bow. So you have to be very careful. And you will discover that the Japanese have a complicated hierarchy in bowing. This is very, very important. They have got a complicated hierarchy. Hierarchy, we call that, a kind of staircase. Hierarchy, step by step method of bowing. Hierarchy, okay. Father, grandfather, from their father, mother, brother, sister, then the younger brother. So there is a hierarchy in bowing, meaning to say how you have to bow to them and how you have to bow to the other person. These different levels of bowing is there, and he explains it very well. He says, you will discover that Japanese have a complicated hierarchy in bowing. Who bows to whom, how deeply, and for how long. This is a hierarchy in bowing. What is that? Who has to bow to whom? Number one. Second, how long you have to bow, timing, and how deep you have to bow, how much you have to bend. First, whom you have to bow. Should you bow to everybody? No. Second, should you bow for a long time? No, it depends whom you are bowing. Second, how deep you have to bend your head. That also depends to whom you are bowing, or whom are you bowing to. Remember this. That's why it is called very quaint, very unusual, or very complicated practice in Japan. He says, one of the American states had an early traffic law which laid down that if two cars met at an intersection, neither was to move before the other had gone. In American state, there was one law. What was that? Imagine two vehicles, two cars come from opposite direction and they meet. Now one has to go to the right, the other one has to go to the left, or one has to go to the south and one has to go to the north. But it is a single road, there is no place, or no, the thing is at an intersection when the roads join. Now who has to go? The rule says you cannot go until and unless the other goes. The same rule is applicable to the other person. You cannot go unless and until he goes. Now, person number or A cannot go until and unless B goes. And what is the rule? B cannot go until and unless A goes. Now who has to go? You find out. how to find a solution for this problem. Same rule is there in Japan, meaning to say you cannot stand from bowing until and unless the other person stands. Does it mean you go on bowing and remain as it is? Not at all. Not at all. It is a technique. It is a skill, and Japanese just pick it up, in a fraction of a second, or by birth. Maybe it is there in their genes. Similarly, if two Japanese bow, neither is to straighten up before the other stands erect in front of him. So what is the rule of bowing? If two Japanese meet and they have to bow to each other, and they cannot stand erect until and unless the other one stands. So both have to bow. This man cannot stand up until this man stands up, or this man cannot stand up until this man stands up. You see the complication. So the other one cannot stand up before the first one stands. Same like that American traffic rule. Okay, a little complicated to us, but they manage it without difficulty, and even the smallest difference in rank, standing, age, social position will be subtly reflected in that split second one man's bow is shorter than the others. Okay, so it is said, how do you know the other person is greater than you or higher than you in social standard? How do you know? How the other person knows? It is reflected in that split of a second when the higher ranked person bows little lesser than the lower ranked person, and the higher ranked person stands erect from bowing little earlier than the lower ranked person. And we come to know in that split of a second. You don't think 5 minutes are taken. You don't think 1 minute is taken. You don't even think second is taken. It is a split of a second. Okay, and the higher ranked person stands up first. Both of them bow to each other, but the higher ranked person bows less and stands earlier, or the lower ranked person bows more and stands later. In many cases, there are clear-cut differences in position and no difficulties. For example, when a teacher and a student meets, there is no difficulty. Student knows the teacher and teacher knows the students. So both teacher and the student would bow to each other. But who stands first? Teacher would stand erect first, and the pupil or the student would stand erect later. And similarly, the student would bow deeper and the teacher need not bow to that level, which is very clear. There is no problem. I know my teacher and the teacher knows me. But what about when you do not know the social position of the other person? The basic rule inside the family. Now let's see what are the rules they follow. The basic rule inside the family is the wife bows to her husband and the child bows to his father, younger brothers to elder brothers, the sister bows to all brothers of whatever age. Okay, now this is very funny. What is that? There are very strange family rule. First, wife bows to her husband. That doesn't mean, husband is greater than the wife. Maybe here it is shown. But you remember, husband and wife, they both complement each other. There isn't like wife is greater or husband is not great. You must remember this and accordingly. Okay, I think the lesson is going beyond time, so I would explain the other part in the days to come, or soon I will upload the next part of this lesson.